Hi, I'm Jonathan Meir. I'm a professor of economics at Texas A&M University where, among other things, I teach an online Principles of Microeconomics course with my colleague Steve Wiggins that reaches nearly 3,000 students a year. We put a lot of effort into our class, and I thought I might be able to offer some advice for those of you who are going to teach online this summer or in the fall, or at least when you have more than 72 hours notice. I should start off by saying that I'm not an expert in online education. I can only offer you my experiences and what I've learned through the many mistakes I made through this process. My discussion here isn't going to be econ specific, but much of it is specific to large courses. There are absolutely different decisions that I would make for a smaller class because a lot of what we did was done with an eye towards scalability. This video also isn't about teaching. If you're watching it, chances are good you already know how to teach. You know the importance of diverse and relatable examples, what students respond to, and where they get stuck. I'm just going to tell you how we set up our class and what I learned along the way. I'll start off by telling you a bit about how to lay the groundwork and I'll give you a brief overview of our course, and then go into the method by which we delivered our content and some of those tips and traps. I'll close with specifics about our course policies and show you what our course looks like. I should add that I have no financial stake in any of this, though it would be great if I did. If I'm honest, I'm doing this because it's a way to feel useful right now. And I also want to thank those friends of mine who nudged me into doing this once live and then provided feedback for this version. Let's start with getting everything in place. One of the keys is the value of your local course designers. You know, those people who always email you offering to help add tech to your class, which we usually just ignore. They actually know the ins and outs of that clunky learning management system that you're forced to use. And right now they're much busier than they used to be, so get in touch with them early. Our course designer for the College of Liberal Arts at A&M is named Shweta Kailani, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that there's no way we could have done this without her. She's amazing, and she deserves a lot of, if not all, of the credit for setting up our class. The first big decision you need to make is how you're going to host your material. One possibility is to put all of your content on your LMS, Blackboard, Canvas, or whatever, and supplement with just a print or e-textbook or other material. And this is a great chance to explore some less expensive options for textbooks. However, the advantage to some of the big textbook companies is the online material that often accompanies those textbooks, though it usually costs more. We use Pearson's My Econ Lab, and what I like about it is that there are a number of more interactive assignments, experiments, and solved problems that we just don't have the capability to create for ourselves. I've seen the products that come from some other publishers, and they've got similar material. It's all pretty good. It's good to reach out to those textbook reps that we also usually do our best to ignore because they will leap at the chance to spend half an hour walking you through their platform so you can figure out what they have to offer. But decide how much you're going to rely on the textbook and how much you're going to rely on material that you create for yourself to find that balance. There are also about 1 million other ed tech products out there that can be added to your LMS with varying degrees of ease. Some of them are really impressive and do cool things, more of those interactive assignments and games. They do cost, though sometimes that cost is worth it. My bigger concern here is that the complexity of adding another thing that the students have to sign up for, another set of servers that have to talk to your LMS, that part is rarely worth it. No matter how many times you tell them, and I'll have more to say on this point in a minute, students will do stuff like sign up with their Gmail accounts instead of their .edu addresses, so the LMS can't sync, so on and so on. Every layer you add in a large class increases the likelihood of problems exponentially, which, as we've learned recently, can take things from fine to disaster really, really quick. And to prevent disaster, you'll have to be really organized. In many ways, for a large class, this is as much an ops and management role as it is teaching. Have your TAs or TA in place from the very beginning so you have an additional set of eyes, and if you can, work with a partner. I require round-the-clock adult supervision, so having Steve Wiggins as my partner on this course was paramount. Figure out what you can delegate and run things efficiently. We have our checklists, joint to-do lists, and all that workflow process that businesses know is super crucial, but we academics so rarely use. So now you're set up. How do you produce this great content? My first piece of advice is to have your entire course be asynchronous if you can. Give students some flexibility about when they work on the material. And I'll talk about binge watching in a bit, along with how we provide more personalized help. But being asynchronous allows for students to pause and rewatch, turn on ADA compliant closed captions, and in my view makes for a more professional experience. YouTube captions are surprisingly good if you speak clearly, and it's not particularly hard or expensive to outsource captioning. If you start with the YouTube created captions, it may be pretty easy to have a student touch them up for clarity. Again, your instructional designer is likely to know what gets you to being ADA compliant on that sort of thing. But what if you're held to a particular time slot, especially if we're shifting with not a lot of notice for this coming fall? I don't have direct experience with this, except for the post-pandemic part of my economics of education course this semester, but I'd suggest flipping your course if you can. Film your videos, have the students watch the videos before class, and then use the class time to present more examples, take questions, and have more in-depth discussions. Though, of course, that's hard to do with 1,500 people in your class in a given semester. You can have the students pre-submit their questions or a response to the content for participation credit, which can be done on a Google form or probably a tool on your LMS. Again, ask your instructional designer and be super nice to them. In my economics of education course, I used an add-on called Packback, which is a forum software that has some clever touches to encourage higher quality discussion. I actually really liked it, and I think it added a fair bit to that class, so if you're in a more flipped situation or even purely online, you might want to check it out. But what did we do for our giant class? We created a 4-foot by 8-foot light board built by our amazing Engineering Innovation Center. It's a piece of very clear glass with lights around it, and when you write on it with fluorescent wet erase marker, it glows kind of like a telestrator. You face the camera, like this, and write as if the class was standing behind you, and then it's mirror imaged in any basic editing software, along with some minor filtering to reduce glare further and make you look your best. You can easily add images, projecting them onto the screen with editing software. These high-quality pictures here give you a sense of what our studio looks like and how it's laid out. And if you're an A&M professor watching this, this now lives in a one-button studio in the Liberal Arts Building, which anyone can use with nothing more than their own USB stick. Just plug and go. These light boards can also be purchased, though they're not as large as ours. So here's a clip of a course video on the positive externalities from hand washing that's particularly appropriate right now.
Well, at point A, your benefit equals your cost. But society's benefit is much bigger. Society would like you to wash your hands at point B. Over here, the benefit to society is much greater than just to you. Up here to point C. This is a hand wash that didn't happen even though the overall benefit was positive. Now we can keep going until point B, where the benefit to everyone in society, including you, is equal to its cost. This triangle ABC is the value of hand washes that should have happened if the externality was taken into account, but didn't. It's dead weight loss. So when there's a positive externality, there's an inefficiently low equilibrium quantity in the market. Too few hand washes, too little research and development, too little education. Keep in mind that accounting for positive externalities means that the marginal social benefit will be greater than the marginal private benefit. And wash your hands.
I'm a big believer in the value of chalk and talk and of showing my face. I think students don't know what to write down when they see a graph appear out of nowhere, and especially if those graphics are really cute, like oil barrels stacking up for a supply curve. What are they supposed to write down? By writing things down myself, I slow down, we write down the content together, and then discuss it. And of course, they can always pause and rewind. What I really like about this is being able to be face-to-face with the students, albeit virtually, and make the experience more tactile. I think it really beats the alternatives. But what if you can't get something like this set up, even if it doesn't cost that much divided among the dozens, hundreds of potential users across your campus over the next few years? I'm not an expert on this, but I'm told it's really easy to use a tablet to draw or handwrite your notes, integrating it with a video of you talking to your students using software like Camtasia, which is actually what I'm using right now to create this video. Now, it takes time to get this right, especially if you're starting from scratch. There are tons of things that I never thought of or wanted to be in charge of, like getting a permanent room, the right kind of lights, setting up the teleprompter at the right level. In the first set of videos that we made the first year we did this, the teleprompter was up really high, so it looked like I had a neurological problem as I was reading off the material from the teleprompter. Really wasn't great. Even finding the right cleaning product to keep the glass streak-free after each video turned out to be a bit of a battle. And I'm so thankful for Shweta and the other amazing staff that got it all set up so that I could focus on the actual content and material of the course. Making it look professional is important. Students are often upset at the notion of an online class, even when the counterfactual was likely not as good. We used to have 15 to 18 sections of 150 or more students, taught by a mix of graduate students and lecturers of varying quality, some of whom were truly excellent, and others were maybe teaching a large lecture for the first time. It made the undergraduate's experience highly variable, and I thought it was unfair to those students, and frankly, I thought it was a bit unfair to the graduate students who were teaching those large lecture courses. Now, is this better than me doing Dead Poet Society to 20 kids in a seminar? No. But is it better than PowerPoint slides Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 to 8:50 where, if you miss what the professor was saying, it's just gone forever and who knows how long you keep showing up to that class? I think it is. I think it is better than that. And doing this allowed us to create the flexibility to offer more upper division courses, have more high quality TAs for our writing intensive classes, and lay the groundwork for a full honors program. So make it look professional. Now, I'm breaking that rule a bit, sitting here in my home office, though at least I put on a jacket and a nice shirt, and I promise you I'm even wearing pants. It means a lot of preparation. Now, I'm usually the professor who interacts with students and riffs for an hour and a half off of 3 bullet points. But you can't riff or react. It doesn't work for this. It's like acting in front of a green screen, talking to a tennis ball and a stick that's going to be CGI'd into a dragon, instead of interacting with a live audience. So it would sometimes take me 2 hours to write a 10-minute script, and then I'd go through 3 versions of edits when I actually did it. And having a teleprompter, which in our case was just a monitor mounted behind the camera, means a smooth, though not always perfect, delivery. You really can't create content on the fly in this environment. I would block out where my graphs were going to be, cut out a lot of those jokes that I would usually have when I'd see my students' faces. And really, I have a lot more sympathy for Will Ferrell's character in Anchorman, Ron Burgundy, who would read anything that was put on his teleprompter. And I'm pretty sure I'd fall for that. In fact, at one point, I'd somehow typoed 16/2 equals 6 in one of my scripts. It does not, but I read it, and no one noticed it until we were going over the video for quality. If you make that mistake in a lecture, it's no big deal. It can even be a teaching point if it's not just misspeaking. Oh, let's talk about why I might have been misled and made that mistake. But in a video like this, you get 900 emails asking what kind of crazy econ math it is. So back to the studio, refilm. Budget a lot of time for each video. You should keep your videos short. Most of ours are 8 minutes or less, and student ratings on the feedback forms we have for each video decreases dramatically for the handful of videos that are longer than 10 minutes. Break up each idea as much as possible. Separate the introduction of a concept and the explanation of the vocabulary from an application, and keep that separate from an example problem. It really does seem like 10 minutes is about the maximum most students can handle at a time. And yes, I'm well aware that I'm violating that rule right now. Maybe I'm proving that point. It's hard to stay focused for a video this long. There will be fewer hours of content than you think once you pull out all of the start of class reminders, end of class paper shuffling, those topical and timely jokes that we love, the repetition of content that you don't have to do in a class like this because it's already archived there for the students. You will probably find that it's about 1/3 the number of actual in-class hours, even if you're covering more content, but it'll take a lot longer to prepare. And replicate the things you would do in person. Some students actually do want to get to know you, so Steve and I made a video of us discussing how we got into economics and why we like it. We made introduction to the course videos, how to succeed and how to study videos, and even though all the content is easily accessible to the students, I made short review videos for each of our 3 exams. Now and for the future, I'm doing weekly Zoom drop-ins to ask questions or discuss current events, or current event, I guess, and also Zoom review sessions for the exams. We've also been doing an in-person kickoff event in one of the giant theaters on campus where we cover a lot of the introductory topics that we already have on the course site, but we also encourage them to meet others and form study groups, and maybe most importantly, prove to them that we're actually human. So let's get into our actual course. Clarity is incredibly important, and so is keeping things as simple as possible. If you can, explain to the students why things are set up the way they are. It helps them feel more connected to the class. And use the technology. You can flag students who blew off their first assignment or who are falling off track. We're especially vigilant in the fall when most students have just started college. If you miss your very first college deadline, someone should talk to you and intervene. And we have almost 100 assignments in our course, most of them small, that come every few days. We can tell if someone stopped doing things much more easily than noticing if 1 out of 250 students stop showing up or their grades are slipping. Now I'll duck over here into the corner and walk you through part of our syllabus. Here's how the course is structured. We start with an introductory module that has a course policies problem set, just basic questions about how the course is organized, how they can get in-person help, when things are due, and so on. They should all get 100, and it starts them off on the right foot with a good grade. We really want to make sure that they know these things. When we added the course policies problem set a few years ago, it made things run much more smoothly. Each of the substantive models focuses on a topic and has between 6 and 12 sections. Each section has one video, like the one that I just showed you, followed by a feedback form. Many of them have supplemental material. It might just be a short clip of the concept explained a different way, which can be helpful, or a news article with an interesting application. They're rarely required, but when they are, we have to keep the students honest by having it be fair game for the exam. There's a link to the relevant section of the textbook if applicable, and each section has a short quiz, 5 to 10 multiple choice questions that are pretty much a were you paying attention check. What's the definition of this term? Can you solve this simple application of the concept? So on. Now, they can't move on to the next section until they complete that quiz, even if the deadline has already passed. So they can't just skip a bunch of material and jump ahead to the next due date. They actually have to do everything. Each module as a whole also has a problem set, which we host on my Econ Lab because it allows us to use those more interactive problems that they have. We have our strict deadline, which is actually 11:59 p.m., and that's how it's listed on the platform. This was my behavioral experiment this semester to see if I could get them to not start their assignments at the absolute last minute. And it worked for maybe a month. It's really striking how many of them wait until that absolute last minute to get started, but you know how students often are. We show them data about how students who pace themselves tend to perform better. Now, obviously, that's correlation and not causation, but making that kind of distinction is the sort of thing they'll learn if they study economics. But that's why we have 2 deadlines per week on Mondays and Thursdays, so they can't fall too far behind or try to binge too much at once. We also don't let them get more than 2 weeks ahead in the class, though even with 1,500 students per semester, there's generally only about a half dozen who are working that far ahead. But they can build a bit of a buffer, which gives them flexibility to plan around their other classes and their other exams. We offer a ton of in-person help. Very few students actually take us up on it, and there's very little posting of questions on the forum. But we have over 30 hours a week of in-person help available, which we've now obviously had to switch to online using Slack and Zoom. It's there, and we really emphasize its availability, which I think it's important. The end of semester feedback that I find most frustrating are the complaints about wanting more in-person help. But it's really there, and so am I. I use this booking software called You Can Book Me, which allows students to make appointments with me really easily. Now, it does make me sound like a fancy prostitute, but it's way more effective than that back and forth, oh, when can I see you? Oh, I have class then. Or me having to block out time where I'm available in my office where maybe nobody shows up and I'm just sitting there. Notice that we also have a dedicated email account for this course at econ202@tamu.edu. We're really strict about that being the only point of email contact because it allows us to keep things organized and my excellent TAs to be able to field emails. And every semester, I hire 5 or 6 really good upper-class undergraduates who have been through the course and do a refresher to staff our study hall and tutoring lab. They have no authority over grading, but that allows us to provide all that in-person help without using a lot of graduate student resources, and also give some of our star undergraduates some experience that's a feather in their cap and some money in their pocket. Now, academic integrity is obviously a big deal for classes like this. We decided that anything we couldn't enforce directly, we wouldn't require. Otherwise, we'd just be putting the vast majority of honest students at a disadvantage. So we encourage them to work together on quizzes and problem sets. 60% of their grade is on the exam, so if they're just copying off their friend, they're not going to end up doing very well. Now, our exams, while multiple choice, are very intuition oriented. They don't ask for definitions. We're testing whether students can apply the concepts we've taught them. The exams are, or rather were before the world fell off its axis, in person. Online proctoring at this scale just isn't feasible. If you're going to do online exams, though, your instructional design staff will be able to help you figure out the best way to prevent cheating. Clarity, clarity, clarity. We really try to make the course as self-explanatory as possible. And in fact, there have been weeks that went by where we didn't get a single email despite the large number of students that we have. But any mistake that you make, like 16 over 2 equals 6, will generate so many emails in a class this big. Now let's switch over to the LMS itself. Why is this click here to get started link in 72-point font? Again, the vast majority of our students are fantastic and figure this stuff out without any problem. But every semester, there are a handful who just ignore all of the instructions, the introductory videos, and all that early content and just go off and do their own thing. This is my last-ditch attempt to prevent them from doing that. Now, there's some basic material here on the front page, but most of the content is in these learning modules. Everything's outlined with its due date. Here's that introductory module with everything they need to know for the class and the course policies problem set. Let's dive into a module. You can see that each section is outlined as well. So let me pick a short section that I particularly like, What Economics Isn't. One of my many attempts to emphasize that economics is about human behavior. It's rich and vibrant. It's so interesting. It's not just about automatons counting up money or the stock market. This is the instructor view, of course, but you can see the video embedded here and its transcript. Here's that feedback form that we genuinely do pay attention to. We've refilmed probably 3/4 of the videos at least once over the past few years, mostly based on student feedback about what they do and don't understand or find compelling. Here's a link to a textbook section, along with 2 supplemental optional videos that just illustrate how the world is interconnected, things that I thought were neat and that interested students would enjoy. There's also an interview with my colleague, Dr. Silvana Kristeva, in the campus TV studio. We did a bunch of these to highlight the cool topics that our colleagues are working on, how they came to be interested in economics, and what advice they have for students taking an introductory class. It's optional because it's unfair to test students on it, but I've had a handful of undergrads who told me that they got really interested in economics, not because of anything I did, but because of the neat research that my colleagues are doing. Now, setting this up will take 3 times longer than you think, just like everything in academia does, and that's true even if you know that rule. You'll make mistakes, but getting feedback on lots of aspects of your course from your staff, TAs, colleagues, and your students will help refine it and hopefully allow you to correct some things on the fly. You'll need to make compromises, sometimes because of technological limitations and sometimes because of the scalability. I really like the class we built up here, warts and all, and I hope you found this video useful. You can email me at jmeir@tamu.edu with questions, and I'll do my best to respond. We're in a pretty different world right now, so let's be flexible, experiment with what works, and let's do the best we can to give our students a high-quality experience. Thanks for watching.